How you doing? It's the Red Pill Dispensary. All right, guys. So, I wasn't gonna do a show tonight, but I've come across something that I just can't hide from my, more faithful viewers. Um, you guys know how it goes. I try to get ahead of things, and this kind of piggybacks on what I was talking about last night. Okay? So, this is huge. Check it out. Let's go to Twitter. Bang. Red Pill Dispensary. Boom. Alright. So hopefully you guys can see that. Get that out of here. And believe it or not, this is from the New York Times. Now, I haven't seen anyone talk about this. I saw one person on Twitter mention it. That's how I came across it. And here we go. Coronavirus outbreak. A cascade of warnings. Heard but unheeded. Now check this out. Now, basically last night, right, I kind of gave you two sides of the coin. I've always the way I've always felt is that, before this virus, that Q was legit, and that it basically had to happen soon. So when I started seeing all this happening, along with some of the acts being passed, they added up to basically them doing everything that they promised to do. Yet, on the other hand, I could not ignore that, you know what, this whole Q thing might have been set up to, some of the more outspoken people, maybe some of the people who support Trump, just to kind of quiet them while something was carried out. Now, I'm still not sure which way I'm leaning, and I think it's best as a creator to keep it that way and just present it how it is. So let's take a look. The outbreak of the respiratory virus began in China and was quickly spread around the world by air travelers who ran high fevers in the United States. Who ran high fevers. In the United States, it was first detected in Chicago, and 47 days later, the WHO, declared a pandemic. By then, it was too late. 110 million Americans were expected to become ill, leading to 7.7 million hospitalized and 586,000 dead. You guys might be thinking, Red Pill, what the hell are you talking about? Well, that's because I'm talking about an exercise that was played out that I don't hear anyone talking about. That scenario, codenamed Crimson Contagion, was simulated by the Trump administration's Department of Health and Human Services in a series of exercises that ran from last January to August, this past August. Right? I mean, does that blow your mind? Okay, so this all caught everyone by such surprise. No, it didn't. I mean, from January to August, the math is easy. January, the month 1, August 9. 9 months. A 9-month exercise was done. Basically playing out exactly what we are going through right now. So you know what? this whole Event 201, it almost kind of like, when it happened, I was like, I'll be honest, the whole Event 201, I was like, no, it's just too obvious. It's just too obvious. It's like, of course people are gonna, it was public, and then all of a sudden it happens a month later, or a month, maybe, a month and a half later. It was just too obvious. This was the real simulation. This was done by the United States military. Okay, so, and we know what the budget is for the military, and yeah, so this is the real smoking gun. Now, again, you can take it one of two ways. One, well, it was planned out because, they wanted to make it as real as possible, and potentially, I'm not even saying that it's not an actual flu, that, an actual, that this is an actual coronavirus. It might be. It probably is. But it could have been planned out in order to make it as real as possible and then carry it out. Because this isn't public information until yesterday. It became public on the New York Times. Yet nobody really caught it, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen this anywhere. And I watch all different types of shows. So I find this very interesting. Or it could be the other side of things. It was planned out because, well, they wanted to basically take out the middle class, install a new world order, basically enslave us to this like digital currency. Or, like I said, the other way. This is part of the plan. And maybe instead of that, maybe it might be a digital currency, but we'll have our country back, and it'll be a gold-backed currency, and we'll no longer be a corporation. We'll actually be sovereign, and the rest of the world will follow, as happens. As the United States go, usually the rest of the world follows. So let's continue. Now that we get the bombshell part out. So the simulation's sobering results, contained in a draft report dated October 2019 that has not previously been reported, drove home just how underfunded, underprepared, and under-coordinated the federal government would be for a life-or-death battle with a virus for which no treatment existed. Kind of sounds like how they're presenting this situation. Yet they knew. They knew. I mean, halfway through the simulation, they had to have an idea. By the end of the simulation in August, they definitely had an idea. By the time that they, wrote up the report in October, they 100. I mean, they can't deny that they didn't know. So there's definitely something funky going on here. But like I said, which side of the coin is it? Is it that gold-backed currency side of the coin? No pun intended. Or, that slave, take away the middle class, the haves and the have-not, New World Order type of thing. Well, let's continue. The draft report, marked not to be disclosed, laid out in stark detail repeated cases of confusion in the exercise. Federal agencies, jockeys, and tell me if this sounds familiar, by the way. Federal agencies jockeyed over who was in charge. State officials and hospitals struggled to figure out what kind of equipment was stockpiled or available. Cities and states went on their ways on school closings. Many of the potentially dead consequences of a failure to address the shortcomings are now playing out in all too real fashion across the country. And it was hardly the first warning for the nation's leaders, which again can mean one of two things. 3 times over the past 4 years, the U.S. government across 2 administrations had grappled in depth with what a pandemic would look like, identifying likely shortcomings, and in some cases recommending specific action. Even the Obama administration produced a comprehensive report on the lessons learned by the government from battling Ebola. In January 2017, outgoing Obama administration's officials ran an extensive exercise on responding to a pandemic for incoming senior officials of the Trump administration. Now that part, it depends on which side of the coin you are on. If you're on the Q side, you know what? They probably did do that, but they might have misled them purposely. In fact, at the beginning, that's exactly what Trump was saying. He started to blame Obama, which everyone was like, what? How could you blame Obama? You've been the president for 3 years. Well, maybe that's what he was getting at. The full story of the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus is still playing out. Government officials, health professionals, journalists, and historians will spend years looking back on the muddled messages and missed opportunities of the past 3 months as President Trump moved from dismissing the coronavirus as a few cases. Said this isn't, first of all, this is legit. This isn't, Reno, Nevada, Chronicles. This is the New York Times. All right. No offense to Reno, but this is legit. This is the New York Times. But because it's the New York Times, it's going to be extremely anti-Trump. Maybe rightfully so. Maybe in my opinion, they're just going to be anti-Trump no matter what. So I don't really read much into it either way. But if it's that other side of the coin, where it's the New World Order, take out the middle class, digital currency, all that, then, I guess I've been going down the wrong path. But I don't think I have. I just think that if that happens to be the case, I just think that they hated him no matter what. I'm still thinking that somebody came forward, obviously, just recently, wants to start again, and once they realize that this is getting bad, and they're like, "Hey, we did a thorough 9-month simulation for this in the military. Oh, I'm sorry, Health and Human Services, and let me remind you." What did I tell you guys when Health and Human Services, the first time the National Guard was deployed, which was New York, New Rochelle, New York. They went to where? Health and Human Services. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, which I found very interesting at the time, they classified the information at Health and Human Resources. So I ended up talking to a source that has done wonders for my channel, and he's the best. But they told me, no, it's just the information coming in that's classified. So it makes a lot of sense. And that's exactly where the National Guard is operating out of, Health and Human Services. And that's exactly who ran this Plannedemic. right? I mean, just in a couple days, the way that my mind has started to look at this, I could see it one of two ways, and I'm still split 50-50, which I think, as somebody presenting this to you guys, is a good thing, because it leaves you the opportunity to make the decision for yourself. I'm not going to ram it down your throat, and be like, just from the beginning, marry my idea and just be like, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake, or, it's all part of the plan, it's all part of the plan, it's all part of the plan. I'm not going to do that. Some could call that a cop-out, but I'm just being honest. I mean, if anyone really feels in their heart, they know 100%, I mean, more power to you. I wish I felt like that, but I would be lying. I would be lying. I am conflicted. My heart's telling me, what is it? I forget, whatever. My mom's telling me my heart, what is it? I forget what it is. All right, anyways, I just sounded stupid. Okay, the full story. Okay, yeah, we already went by that. As President Trump moved from dismissing the coronavirus as a few cases that would soon be under control to his revisionist announcement on Monday, I mean, he really did kind of. I'll admit that much. He went from saying, like, the flu is worse to, like, national emergency. Let's get a task force. I'll admit that much. To his revisionist announcement on Monday that he had all along known that a pandemic was on the way. What the scenario makes clear, however, is that his own administration had already modeled a similar pandemic and understood its potential trajectory. The White House defended its record, saying it responded to the 2019 exercise with an executive order to improve the availability and quality of flu vaccines, and that it moved early this year to increase funding for the Department of, again, Health and Human Services, classified for some, right? That was the first thing they did. They were like, yeah, classified. Everything out there, classified. So you're not going to get anything out. I mean, anything coming in is not going to get out. You know what I'm saying? Program that focuses on global pandemic threats. But officials have declined to say why the administration was so slow to roll out broad testing or move faster, as the simulations all indicated it should, to urge social distancing and school closings. Now that right there, that makes my mind go the other way. I'm thinking, score one for the Q team, right? They're not so concerned because this simulation may well be part of the plan. And if you watch my show from last night, you will get a boatload of information, which is why I was upset that people didn't even watch it. But I did it so late. That's the thing. I did it. I mean, I ended at what? Was it 4:30 in the morning? So, I mean, I kind of understand to a point. But even then, it's like, it was still low. It's too low, the view count. It didn't really make sense, especially with everyone at home. Asked at his news briefing on Thursday about the government's preparedness, Mr. Trump responded, "Nobody knew there would be a pandemic or epidemic of this proportion. Nobody has ever seen anything like this before." So again, it's the New York Times. They're going to keep poking at him. Potentially, rightfully so. But I'm hoping it's all part of the plan. Or am I a fool for even considering that? We'll see. The work done over the past 5 years, however, demonstrates that the government has considerable knowledge about the risks of a pandemic and accurately predicted the very types of problems Mr. Trump, it's President Trump, by the way, is now scrambling belatedly to address. The world is battling an outbreak of a new coronavirus called COVID-19, which started in the city of Wuhan, China, and has been spreading around the globe, killing thousands. The World Health Organization declared a global pandemic on March 11th. Sharp is whatever. Okay, so now this is the exercise. It was called, by the way, if you guys want to look it up, don't take my word. Definitely don't take the New York Times word, right? Crimson Contagion. I looked it up. Legit. The exercise conducted last year in Washington and 12 states, including... So this is what blows me away. And this also makes me think that they know exactly what's going on. Listen to this. Washington, New York, and Illinois. Obviously, Chicago's in Illinois. Where was the first case? Illinois. Where was the second case? Washington. Where was the third case? I believe it was in New York. But, you have the top two states that are the worst off. You have, it's just unbelievable. Washington, New York, two of the top two states that have it the worst off. Then you have Illinois, where we had our first, what they call community spread, where somebody didn't just come from China with it, but they actually spread it to someone else. It was actually a woman who came from China, and her husband refused to leave her side, so he ended up contracting it as well. Could be a coincidence, but that's a hell of a coincidence. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's other big states, Texas, like Florida, but no, Washington, New York, and Illinois. But the planning and thinking happened many layers down in the bureaucracy. The knowledge and sense of urgency about the peril appear never to have gotten sufficient attention at the highest level of the executive branch or from Congress. Now, or from Congress, potentially, at the executive branch, maybe not. You guys know where I stand with that. I'm kind of split. Leaving the nation with funding shortfalls, which might be on purpose. I'm sorry, not funding shortfalls, but as far as the economy. They're either crashing it to go digital, take out the middle class, screw us, or crashing it, bringing it back to the gold standard, and implementing all these things that have been. I mean, just watch last night's show. That's why I got pissed off when I saw the numbers. Not because I don't care. There's no money. I'm not made that. There's no money being made. I'm not worried about making money because that's not happening. I want to get the word out. How can I get the word out? I mean, I'm happy I got the word out to, 150 people or something. But, I mean, more people need to know this. Share. Last night and this. This is huge. Nobody's talking about this. I mean, one very smart guy who I highly respect on Twitter is talking about it, but that's it. The October 2019 report in particular documents that officials at the Department of Homeland Security and Health and Human Services, again, HHS, the only place where they decided we're going to, all of a sudden, unprecedented, classify anything going in so nothing comes out. I believe it's unprecedented, but it's definitely it was a surprise. I spoke to people who, had worked with HHS, and they said, yeah, I was surprised by that. But at the same time, they said it kind of makes sense that it's just they're only classifying the information coming in, because this if you believe what's being said, it's potentially a what they call an envelope virus, which means it mutates. It can have, it's almost like opening an envelope, and then, 2 generations down the line, meaning it infects one, then it spreads to another. All of a sudden, another envelope opens, and another, things that are you guys know where I stand. I believe man-made. This isn't natural. What are the chances? There's 2 places that could have held this virus. One in Atlanta, and one happened to be 1 mile out of all the land. I mean, if someone wants to look up how many square miles there are on Earth as far as land, what are the chances? All right, take that number and say, one out of that many chances that it would be 1 mile away, which the Wuhan lab was. The only other lab besides Atlanta CDC that had this virus. So yeah, I'm not, they might have released it and made it so it did go into the animal, knowing that it would be consumed and then spread. Yeah, I'll take that. But there's no way I'm thinking that it wasn't purposely released from that lab, one way or the other. Let's see. Nobody ever thought of numbers like this, Mr. Trump said on Wednesday at a news conference. In fact, they had. From Ebola, lessons learned. As early as the George W. Bush administration, Homeland Security and health officials focused on big gaps in the American response to a biological attack and the growing risk of pandemics. The first test came in April 2009, just a few months after the start of President Barack Obama's first term. A 10-year-old California girl was diagnosed with a contagious disease that would be called swine flu, or H1N1. And there was a lot of criticism over them declaring that a pandemic. As deadly as it was, there was a lot of criticism. They said they overreacted by calling it a pandemic. And it says right there, the first flu pandemic in more than 40 years. Now, I don't know, was it an overreaction, or did they handle it well? I don't know. Probably an overreaction, but when it comes to these things, is there such a thing as an overreaction? I don't know. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, that ultimately there were about 60.8 million cases in the United States, along with 274,304 hospitalizations and 12,469 deaths associated with H1N1, which dwarfs the numbers of what we got going right now with the coronavirus by far. Yet, the coronavirus, unchecked, and I shouldn't say coronavirus, I mean, SARS is considered a coronavirus. I should really just say, Charlie Victor 19er. You know what I mean? But as it is now, it dwarfs compared to that. But it has the potential, if left unchecked, to really get out of hand. That's the problem. We wouldn't peak for another 40 days. But all of a sudden, oh, look, they have this hydrochloroside, I'm pronouncing it wrong, but which happens to be like one or two molecular structures away from THC. Yeah, believe it or not, like I said, watch last night's show. It makes me think almost, this is, I don't know. It can go either way. So the virus turned out to be less deadly than first expected, but it was a warning shot that, that's still a lot of, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I was going to say, I was like, I don't remember it being that bad. Those were estimates, those numbers. I'm sorry. Okay, so, but then again, it could have been really bad, or they overreacted. A lot of people say they overreacted. I know that. I remember that. People were very critical. The virus turned out to be less deadly than first expected, but it was a warning shot that officials in the Obama administration said they took seriously, kicking off a planning effort that escalated in early 2014 with the outbreak of Ebola in West Africa and ensuing fear that it could spread to the United States. Ebola was way less contagious than the flu, but far more deadly. It killed 11,000 people in Africa, but it could have been far worse. The United States sent nearly 3,000 troops. A couple of my buddies were part of that in the U.S. Navy. They assisted off the coast of Africa, brought in all kinds of supplies. Probably, I think, did they have a? But I know that he spent a lot of his time in the Navy off the coast of Africa. And he was doing, he can look back and say he saved lives, but, as opposed to, hitting every Pacific island, going, hit Westpac and all that, having a great time. But you know what? It's the military, and he was saving lives. While the containment effort was considered a success inside the White House, officials sensed that the United States had gotten lucky and that the response had revealed gaps in preparedness. Christopher Kershaw, a national security aide who moved from the Pentagon to the White House to deal with the Ebola crisis, was given the job and began to learn. Okay, so we don't need like a whole a thing on the on Ebola. I don't need to, write a paper on it. But on February 10th, nearly 3 weeks after the first coronavirus case was diagnosed in the United States, Mr. Trump submitted a 2021 budget proposal that called, and I believe the first was Washington, or was it Chicago? I forget which one, but it's funny how both were mentioned. And then, of course, New York was the first that had National Guard, where you had a certain pocket where it was really bad in New Rochelle, a place that I'm pretty familiar with. Let's see. Submitted a 2021 budget proposal that called for a $69.3 million reduction in funding for the CDC, or about 9%, although there was a modest increase for the division that combats global pandemics. Well, I mean, name me one pandemic that started here in the U.S. Yeah, I'm still waiting. Don't hold your breath on that one. Kind of makes sense to me. The Crimson, as far, that aspect of it, you want to invest in these, like, global pandemic, however they detect it in other places, and I don't know, prevent it from coming here, which they claim they claim they did such a great job, but back when I first reported it, I said, hey, they should have done it a week ago. They should have declared this 2 weeks ago. I mean, I don't know. But then again, that's back when I was 100% positive, and even just a few, like 4 days ago, I was 100% positive that this was all in the up and up. But I definitely knew that, hey, never waste a crisis. There was things going on behind the scenes that was gonna change things in America for forever. I knew that much. I'm not stupid, but I just thought it was 100% legit. Now I question it a little bit. They knew this was coming. And, or if they didn't know it was coming, they had just ran the simulation to prepare for what is coming. What ended up coming, I should say. So the Crimson Contagion planned exercise ran last year by the HHS officials from 12 states and at least a dozen federal agencies. They included the Pentagon, the Department of Veteran Affairs, at which we see the head of the VA speaking all the time, and the NSC, National Security Council. Groups like the American Red Cross and American Nurses Association were invited to join, as were health insurance companies and major hospitals like the Mayo Clinic. Now, I kind of score one for Q there, because what you see all the time is, he says, red. What was it? How does he do it? Red and red. He does it in a certain way where people figure out over time it means Red Cross, and then that was confirmed. So that's interesting. The war game-like exercise is overseen by Robert P. Cadlick, a former Air Force physician who has spent decades focused on biodefense issues. After stints on the Bush administration's Homeland Security Council and the staff of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is interesting, he was appointed Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services for Preparedness and Response. He recognized early that we have a big problem and we needed much bigger budgets to prepare, said Richard Danzig, the Secretary of the Navy in the Clinton administration, who had worked with Mr. Cadlick. I think we mentioned him last night too. I'm telling you guys, you got to see last night's show. The exercise played out in 4 separate stages starting in January 2019. The events were supposedly unspooling in real time, with the worst-case scenario underway as of August 13, 2019, when, according to the script, 12,100 cases had already been reported in the United States, with the largest number in Chicago, which had 1,400. Again, it's kind of funny how these simulations replicate real life pretty close, because it looked like Chicago. That was the first community, as they call it, community spread. The fictional outbreak involved the pandemic flu, with the Department of HHS says was very different than the novel coronavirus. Oh, okay. The staged outbreak had started when a group of 35 tourists visiting China, so even in the simulation it came from China. But then again, that's not exactly some huge, like, oh my, wow. Most of these things come out of China for many reasons. Were infected and then flew home to Australia, Kuwait, Malaysia, Thailand, Britain, and Spain, as well as the U.S., with some developing respiratory symptoms and fevers en route. A 52-year-old man from Chicago who was on the tour had low energy and a dry cough. Upon his return home, his 17-year-old son on that same day went out to a large public event in Chicago, and the chain of illnesses in the United States started. Now, just so you know, if you didn't follow this pandemic too closely, that's the simulated. That's what happened in the simulation. But not too far from what happened in real life, except it was a woman who came home, and it was her husband who wouldn't leave her side. And that was the first human to human, or as they call it, community spread in the U.S. I mean, what a coinky-dink. And I'll tell you, I don't believe in coincidences. Many of the moments during the tabletop exercise are now chillingly familiar. Well, you just name one. In the fictional pandemic, as the virus spread quickly across the United States, the CDC issued guidelines for social distancing, and many employees were told to work from home. I mean, this almost kind of scores one on the Q side. It's like they almost like did this simulation in order to make it as real as possible as they carried out the to be trusted, as they say, trust the plan. I don't know. But federal and state officials struggled to identify which employees were essential and what equipment was needed to effectively work from home. There also was confusion over how to handle school children. The CDC recommended that states delay school openings as the exercise took place toward the end of the summer. But some school districts decided to go ahead with the start of school while others followed the federal advice, causing the same types of confusions and discrepancies that have marked the response to the coronavirus. The exercise from last year then went on to predict how the situation on the ground in the United States would worsen as the weeks passed. Confusion emerged as state governments began to turn in large numbers to Washington for help to address shortages of antiviral medications, personal protective equipment, and ventilators. Then states started to submit requests to different branches of the federal government, leading to bureaucratic chaos. Friction also emerged between FEMA, which is traditionally in charge of disaster response, and the HHS. Another scenario playing out, and it seems like the HHS is kind of taking the lead, and FEMA is just now kind of, getting a foothold and learning where their spot is in this whole thing. So, I don't know. Guys, what do you think? Pretty unbelievable, if you ask me. Unbelievable. It's like, it's amazing. It really is amazing. It really is. It blows my mind. Anyways, on Twitter, you'll find me at the Red Pill News Dispenser. And of course, here on YouTube, it's the Red Pill Dispensary. Unless you were one of the few that caught this, and or that gentleman who had it on Twitter, you heard it here first. Proof of the Plannedemic. Red Pill Dispensary. Alright, take care, fellas. Hope you guys have a good night. I was cranky earlier when I saw those numbers. So, because I'm telling you guys, check out the show from last night. It's just part one. A lot of information in there. Very valuable. And like I said, no matter which side of the coin you're on, it's valuable information because it can work either way. Just like this Plannedemic. So this simulation, let's say. I'll say simulation, but Plannedemic kind of sounds cool too. All right, Red Pill Dispensary. Take care, fellas. You guys know what's up. Spread the word.